In this class this semester, we have been studying human performance technology. And in my paper, I'm taking a look at human performance technology in the field of education. The title of my presentation is Human Performance Technology, The Way It's Done by yours truly, Kevin Johnson. Education's role in society is something that we must explore when we take a look at human performance technology in education. Education has been one of the things that have helped our current society outlast and outachieve several of the great civilizations in history. Great civilizations such as Rome, Egypt, Samaria, Greece, and others all had several great contributions and were great in several areas. These nations conquered several miles of territory and had a lasting effect on the history and the culture of man in all the world. One of the things, in my estimation, that caused them to eventually die out or fall by the wayside, was a lack of education. Now, I'm not going to say these societies didn't have education. They offered some sort of education, but they offered limited education. And limited means for everyone to take advantage of learning. Here we have three representations of ancient education in several societies. This relief on the left would be a Roman school of education. There you see the teacher, the students, and the things that they're working on. Here in the left upper corner, you have a Spartan school. Now, the Spartan school of education was a little different from the Roman schools of education. Rome kind of dealt with other things, some of the more mental pursuits, as Sparta, being a warrior class society, dealt with things that were more so to get their pupils ready to be part of the Spartan military machine, the Spartan lifestyle. These children were there from 7 to 18, okay, and they went about learning the business of being a Spartan warrior. They learned things like scavenging, hunting, military things, how to kill, how to survive, things of that nature. Now, in the bottom right-hand corner here, we have a presentation of another Roman school. This one looks like it's a church, and it's not so much ancient, but it's kind of probably going toward some of the Middle Ages. So these are three representations of schools. I have a couple more. This one in the black on the left-hand side would be a representation of an ancient Greek school, probably from the Hellenistic period as well. You can look at some of the things they have there. You can see some of the things that they concentrated on in their education. Musical instruments, music, writing. They dealt with philosophy, things of that nature. In the top right-hand corner here, you have a Sumerian school. This one dealt with writing and things of that nature, and also things that would allow a young man to achieve a certain rank in society. These schools, as some of the others, were similar in that respect. Education is one of the bedrocks of our society today. Education is one of the things that differs when it comes to current society and past societies. And this, I believe, is really important. in that. And the curriculum, as I spoke about earlier, was often some sort of language, Latin, some sort of arithmetic, geography, and maybe some sort of philosophy. As far as arithmetic is concerned, it was limited because different parts of the world had other math and other arithmetic and other things that certain part of the world didn't. For instance, algebra and things of that nature came from the Middle East. The Western world wasn't aware of it for some time, and they eventually became aware of it as trade with the Middle East started. Military science, as I spoke about earlier as well, often played a part in the education of these future leaders. They had to be generals. The citizen soldier was a big thing in ancient societies. Not only were they a farmer or something in the civilization or philosopher or whatever, but often they were soldiers as well. So they had to learn military science. Now, education was basically, in most societies, save for the people who were either of royal blood, people who were rich, people who were, landowners, things of that nature. There was a caste system, the haves, the have-nots, the landed class, as opposed to the serfs. All right, and it's the same thing as the feudal system. It's basically, a caste system. And your poor people or serfs or peasants were left out of education. But they received an education of sorts as they learned trades or skills that allowed them to be viable and make a living doing things that were important in their world, such as, like I said, blacksmithing, building, carpentry, things of that nature. So they received education in those sorts of things. Later on, as the years went by, compulsory education became common. It started to become common in Europe in the 16th, 17th centuries, 18th, 19th centuries, but it kind of took hold in most civilized nations in the 20th century. The years went by and decades went by and school became compulsory. Everyone was offered an opportunity to learn. The disparity between the schools that were different on the basis of race and socioeconomic status began to become prevalent. Now, if you are in an area that's affluent and has a lot of money, your education is going to most likely be better than education in areas where the socioeconomic standing is less. Also, this breaks down on racial lines in this country and in other countries. You had races and groups of people who weren't allowed even to be educated, and when they were allowed to be educated, they received inferior education. This, with the passage in this country of the Civil Rights, Brown versus Board of Education, that made separate but equal in schools, illegal, okay, you begin to have a situation where people were able to catch the same sort of education that white people and people of affluence were able to get. But implementation of separate but equal in schools began to produce school systems that were inferior and produced less academic success. By that I mean people who came from those schools. I can remember my mom. She was born in a town called Lincoln, Alabama, and she talked about how she attended TCT, Talladega County Training School, 20 miles away from her home. Okay, and Lincoln High School was 5 miles away from her home, and she wasn't able to attend it. And she went to TCT, and her education was inferior. And she said when she attended Tuskegee University, she felt she wasn't equipped, and she had a hard time because she hadn't received the same education as white students and people who were rich in her town of Lincoln, Alabama. All right. Also, in this, attention was not paid to the best way students could learn. They used the tried true methods: repetition, recitation, basically memorizing facts and memorizing things that they had to learn in education. Um, the old joke goes: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Basically, that was it. So something had to be done for the student at large to enable them to be able to learn the best way they can, because people learn differently. Repetition and recitation might be good for one student while the next might learn better in a different way. This is where human performance technology comes in. Human performance technology came on the scene in the 1960s with publications and research promoting systematic processes for improving performance. The discipline became more prominent in the 70s as it came. The foundations of human performance technology are grounded in behavioralism. The father of the discipline, HPT, Thomas Gilbert, published works of human performance technology. 1978, the behavior engineering model, the difference between instruction design and instructional technology and instructional science. Other works such as Rumler's 1972 Anatomy of Performance, Major and Pipe's 1970 Early Introduction of Measurable Learning Objectives, and Harlot's 1973 Approach to the Systematic Instruction in the Workplace. These were all real big in the field, and they kind of laid blueprints as to how the field was going to go, and the important things. These were, you might say, these were Bibles or the Quran, if you will, of the system of human performance technology. What is human performance technology? Human performance technology is one of the learning strategies, that has helped improve the way students are able to learn in classrooms of the 21st century. The concept of HPT has several different definitions. Some of them are a systematic approach to discovering and analyzing systematic approaches in a process, or a method to bring about changes to a system and improve a system. Here we have a chart which breaks down the tenets of human performance technology. All right? This is the HPT model: performance analysis, organizational mission, strategy and goals, desired workforce performance, gap analysis. There's your gap, actual state of the workforce performance, work, organizational, and competitive environment. Lack of data, information, feedback, resources, tools, environmental support, initiatives, rewards, or consequences, motives, expectations, individual capacity, skills, knowledge. This is all under cause analysis. Coming over to intervention, selection, and design, appraisal systems, career development, coaching, cultural change, compensation, documentation, environment, engineering, health, wellness, informational system, job aids, job work design, leadership, organizational design, electronic performance support, pre-engineering staffing, supervision, team building, training, education, and others. Evaluation, implementation, and change. Once again, this is an example of, in a nutshell, the HPT model. The flipped classroom and digital tools for the classroom. We have an example here of some things that could be used in the flipped classroom and some of the tools. We have an iPad, we have a laptop computer, pencils, papers, pens. This is an iWatch. And these are things that could be helpful in today's flipped classroom of the 21st century. What does HPT look like today in a modern classroom? HPT allows one to select technological tools that can be used to allow learning to be more efficient and students to get more out of it. The name of the game today in education is engagement, allowing students to become more involved in the process. And in the classroom today, everything is about engagement. I mean, engagement allows learning to become more student-centered as opposed to teacher-centered. Some teachers in the past, and I can remember teachers I had who just went up to the board and lectured, and we had to take notes, and some people took notes, some people didn't know how to take notes. Some people got it, and some people didn't. A lot of teachers believe that lecturing and having children recite and memorize things allows their lessons to have the necessary rigor needed to ensure that they learn the material. The flipped classroom is just as effective, and I'll give you an example of this. Instead of just standing in the class in your lecture, a teacher could put their lecture on a PowerPoint and put it up on a Promethean board or overhead projector. He or she would stand and give their lecture, but during the lecture there would be effects and videos and things that would make the lecture more interesting to students. All right? And as they go on with this lecture, as the lecture is divided into sections, the teacher could, at the end of each section, before they move on to the next section, add poll questions and use clickers to enable them to answer questions on the section that they just went. And if you do this for each section, students will be able to get an understanding and put the ideas that they just learned into practice. Well, they will be able to make sure that they understand what they've been going on. You do poll questions each section, and then at the end you could have some sort of review. Okay? This makes it interesting and thought-provoking to students. Sometimes teachers have problems with learning techniques like this, but I found it to be successful in my learning as well as with my students. Students tend to learn better if they're into the lesson, and they get more out of it that way. That's from my personal experience. HPT in practice. This is a comparison of the traditional classroom as opposed to the flipped classroom. To the left, you see the traditional classroom. It's just as I talked about. Teacher at the board lecturing, students sitting there watching. Then they would have activities and homework that they would have to turn in on the lesson. No checking for understanding, nothing of that sort. And this causes problems because often children tend to not want to stop the lecture, or teachers even don't want to stop their lectures, and they want to get on so they can make sure that the students get everything that they have. So students kind of fall by the wayside. Now, the flipped classroom on the right, you have a lecture and it may be delivered through electronic means. Here, a student can look at a lecture on a computer. The teacher could have pre-recorded the lecture and sent it to the students on their laptop. The student in class is looking at the lecture. Then afterwards, they would have a classroom activity that way they could process and ensure that they have understanding of the content they just went over. This is another example of the flipped classroom in use. Okay, before. There would be an assignment given out or information such as reading materials. Teacher might send a video or something to students as they, on Google Classroom. They go home and they look at the information. They might give them a handout. Okay, there might be a reading, something of that the students would use to take home and go over everything and make sure they have the information. When they come to school the next day, students would put into practice the things that they learned, and they would apply key concepts and feedback with each other and with the teacher, thus getting a greater understanding. Once they finish this during class, they would check their understanding and extend their learning. Okay, and this could be done with some sort of quiz at the end. This could be done with exercise in which they talk about what they just learned, and students would offer what the input after what they input from what they just learned and whatnot in the lesson. This is proven to be more effective as students learn in the classroom. Also, HPT has gone into other areas. Colleges are starting to use HPT in their programs in order to produce teachers who are practitioners of HPT, or Human Performance Technology. The University of North Carolina at Charlotte has introduced a Human Performance Technology program that has allowed its students in the Instructional Systems Technology program to develop instructional technologies that were grounded in instructional technology foundation principles, theories, applications, and current trends. Basically, as I said before, they're teaching teachers of tomorrow to use HTP. All right? Same thing with the University of Arizona. They had a partnership with the Arizona School District with the Arizona School District, where they, with the help of students from Arizona State University, were named to participate in the Use Assisted Project-Based Instruction, TAPBI. They were to create 20 courses for high school use. The system was required to rely on the ability of the content teacher to design instructional materials for this program. A big emphasis was put on training and support of teachers. The students from Arizona State were instrumental during the 2-month period in which they collaborated. This is basically putting HPT in practice. And we have the same sort of situation in our school system. We work with Virginia Commonwealth Universities, and they give us trainings and professional development on some of the latest trends out, human performance technology and such. And they come around and assist us in our classrooms to ensure that we, can put these techniques in action and get a better result. And it's worked some, and as our test scores have gone up, and it's just meant the world to our society. The students kind of look forward to the practitioners that they come in and help, and we're able to meet students where they are, which is the key concept in the whole thing. Because, like I said earlier, students learn differently. Students learn differently, and what motivates one student or inspires one student doesn't motivate or inspire the other student. And this has been very, very important, and we've had success, lots of success, and it's something that more schools should do. And it's worked, as I said, very, very well in our system. These are the schools that have been instrumental in this presentation, for this presentation in training teachers in HBT. Although there are other schools, these schools are the ones I use: the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and Arizona State University. This and Introduction to Human Performance Technology has been instrumental in allowing the 21st century learner and practitioner to have a means to have a success that other students in the past and in other systems that were inferior didn't have. And another thing it does is it allows systems that don't have a lot of money, systems that don't have a lot of affluent people, systems that don't have a lot of resources at their fingertips to be able to have access to worlds and worlds of research through the use of technology. A school might not have the biggest computer lab there is, or the biggest everything there is, but through through interaction with outside schools and partnerships and the use of strategies such as K and other things like Google Classroom, Discovery Ed, things of that nature that allow students in these poor socioeconomic systems to have access and have a level playing field when it comes to education with the students from your more affluent systems. This has worked very, very well, and one of the things I really enjoyed is being a teacher and implementing these techniques and giving my students a chance to be successful. These are the references. And in closing, I'd like to say human performance technology has been very, very, very instrumental in allowing success in situations where there wasn't success in the past. More and more techniques are being discovered yearly, to help children reach their goals and be successful in the classroom. And this is only going to continue as we as educators can become practitioners of human performance technology and other techniques that will allow students to be able to receive the education that they deserve, the education that every man has been, promised when the concept of compulsory education was introduced. Human performance technology is the wave of the future, and something that I wholeheartedly agree with, and I think will be one of the things that keeps our society moving in the direction it is for some time to come. Thank you.